Cover Killer Nation, it is almost time for us once again to journey to the long, long ago, to the past, to go back to the year 2002, whenever an album by the title of Alive or Just Breathing was released by a band named Killswitch Engage. An album that actually would put Jesse Leach and the band at what many people would call the pinnacle of the metalcore scene, which at that point in time was gaining some serious momentum, both in the metal media and in the media in general. Metalcore was actually helping to bring metal out of the new metal idea that had really been ruling airwaves for the latter part of the 1990s and the first part of the 2000s, with bands like Limp Bizkit and Korn, Godsmack, and Disturbed really ruling airwaves. Now a harder-edged, a little bit more focused on growling and screaming, as well as clean singing, was starting to take over. And Killswitch Engage, along with Jesse Leach, were at the forefront. Now let's fast forward to 11 years later, to the present, 2013, where their sixth album, Disarm the Descent, is set to come out here in early April. In fact, just 1 week from today. And we have the return of Jesse Leach after a long period away from the band due to personal reasons, due to a dark cloud of depression that had really set across him while they were on tour promoting the very album that I just spoke about. In these journeys, Jesse Leach had done many different things. He had been in a blues rock group entitled Seamless, and he had also been in Times of Grace along with his former bandmate Adam from Killswitch Engage. And well, the journey all came full circle when in 2012 it was announced that Howard was going to be departing and Jesse Leach was going to be returning. This album, I don't think a lot of us were ready for. This album, I believe, took a lot of people that have listened to it today really by surprise. The reason for this is because I don't think we really thought that after the most recent couple of Killswitch albums that we would really hear that sound that was so intense on an album such as Alive or Just Breathing ever again. It was something where metalcore had kind of started to really fade out. It was something where a couple of bands were continuing to ride the banner high. Bands such as LA Dying and Shadows Fall that had kind of been around from the start. But all of the second wavers, or the waves that came on board simply because of the popularity of the genre, had already kind of fizzled, drawn out, faded, or had moved on to try to, harvest their craft elsewhere or in other ways, because metalcore was not really something that was, I guess, all that popular any longer. It has since been replaced with deathcore or pop punk or whatever. Disarm the Descent actually does exactly what I did at the first part of this video. It takes you back 11 years. It reminds you of the release of Alive or Just Breathing by Killswitch Engage, but also adds overtones from other bands, overtones from other albums in Killswitch Engage's discography, and also just brings something entirely necessary to the table for metalcore everywhere. Killswitch Engage has been a band that has not released a studio album now in a couple of years. And because of that, metalcore has seemed to just flounder a little bit. And with Killswitch's return, they returned right to the top of the mountain. It's almost like, I'm making a wrestling allegory here, I don't believe it. It's like The Rock. The Rock leaves and goes Hollywood, comes back, and within a year, he's WWE champion. He's only been in 2 or 3 matchups. It all seems really unfair. But with Killswitch, it's not only fair, it's justified. This album doesn't have any songs that breach the 5-minute mark, really. And really, to be perfectly blunt, the variety on it seems to be right at the right level. It seems to really be very balanced. And it's a riff fest. It's vocally very sound. It's technically very solid. And it's produced beautifully. Adam has been a great producer. He's been a great artist. Everything that he has done, all the different hats that he has really taken on for this band, have always led to fruitful result. However, with the re-edition of Jesse Leach, that is where the fruits have really been bearing. This is where the harvest has finally come in for Killswitch Engage, because this album is excellent. For all the reasons that I just spelled out, because of the very, very well done production, because of the fantastic songwriting, everything about this feels fresh, even though, as far as sound quality goes, it doesn't sound all of that different. It just reverberates you back to the year 2002, whenever Jesse was still in the band, while also giving you glimpses of perhaps the Art of Balance era Shadows Fall. It kind of reminds you of what the metalcore scene was all about in the first part of the 2000s. Some of you may be too young to know what this was all about whenever it was going on. Some of you probably have discovered it kind of post-script. However, whenever this was going on, this was all the rage. This was a big deal. This is just like whenever melodic death metal was starting to become a bigger commodity. This is just like whenever deathcore first started to become a big commodity. It was something where the sound, even though it had been done in the past by a couple of bands, even though this wasn't necessarily the first time that metalcore had ever been a realized idea, it was being done in a way that it was capturing and captivating audiences. And this album, Disarm the Descent, captivates and captures audiences just the same. The raw intensity and power of Jesse Leach's voice is back. Everything that was trademarked to the album Alive and Just Breathing has returned to Disarm the Descent. Everything about this has all of the trademarks of a legendary Killswitch return. And that's exactly what this album is going to go down as. It's going to go down as the album in which Killswitch not only returns to form, but it's going to be an album that people will remember because Killswitch returned to form. Now, this is in no way saying that whenever Howard was in the band, Killswitch was mediocre or that Killswitch was inferior. This is instead saying that Jesse has brought extra oomph back. Jesse has finally cleared his head of all of the clouds that were really bogging him down, kind of raining sorrow and depression into his soul, leaving him unable to lead this band back in 2003, 2004. Instead, he seems clear-minded and almost like a clairvoyant. Whenever they brought him back into the band, Killswitch sounds refreshed. I love the word refreshed because that is exactly what I see with this band. I see Killswitch really getting a jump start. It's almost as though they were dead for a little while and they got the defibrillator patches put right there by their heart and jump started once again. But instead of it merely bringing them back to life, it restored the fury in their life. It restored everything that drove them as musicians and continues to do so. This album's charm is not in the fact that it mirrors an album from 11 years ago. It's not in the charm of the fact that it seems like a novelty that such an album can exist 11 years later. It's instead in the fact that because of this album, metalcore still sounds fresh. Even though we've had a plethora of bands come across the metalcore ranks throughout the past decade, even though metalcore itself has peaked and fallen in this time frame, Killswitch has still been able to make it sound just as fresh as they did in 2002. As a fan of metalcore in a very short period of my life, somebody who really doesn't enjoy it as much now as I previously did whenever it was first, really taking off. It was one of those things where I listened to that along with a lot of Opeth, Porcupine Tree, Dream Theater, everything else that I was really getting into at that point. It's very nice to hear the band still sound this fresh. This is a band that I kind of fell off the wagon with a little bit. I kind of felt that they were starting to go a little mainstream. But I'm glad to hear that they've come back and come back with a fury. You can still hear some tones and glimmers from the end of Heartache in here. You hear tones from the era that this album best represents. And that is the era of glory for the metalcore subgenre. I think that 2013 is going to be a year in which a lot of bands will look at what Killswitch has done and really be revitalized. I think if there's a lot of bands in the metalcore genre that have opted to take some time off, or have opted to kind of just leisurely write their albums, I think they'll look at this album and realize that they have to step up their game. The new As I Lay Dying album, it was a good release. However, this album far surpasses it. This is an album that takes what they did and takes it up another notch. The new Shadows Fall album, it was a tremendous return to form. It was very well done and very focused. But Killswitch has taken that idea and told Shadows Fall, well, here we are, your move. This is a tremendous release. This is an excellent release. And this should be a sought-out release whenever it comes out on Tuesday, April the 2nd. this is one that you're definitely going to want to own, especially if you're an older fan like me, who experienced the metalcore subgenre at its peak, or for younger fans, or really any fan, that has experienced Killswitch Engage in some way. In a way, April the 2nd will be like Christmas for you. In a way, April the 2nd will be the day that you've been waiting for a very long time.